Marcus is 38. He's a structural engineer in Denver, makes $91,000 a year. And last spring, he sold every single stock he owned on the same day the S&P 500 hit its lowest point of the year. He didn't do it because he panicked. He did it because he followed a plan. The problem was, it wasn't his plan. It was something he'd stitched together from a Reddit thread, a podcast he half-listened to on a commute, and a YouTube video he watched twice. He called it his philosophy. But when the market dropped 19% in 6 weeks, that patchwork fell apart at the seams. And Marcus lost $34,000 in realized losses. Not paper losses, real ones. Because he sold. Here's the thing. Marcus isn't stupid. He's the guy who calculates load-bearing tolerances for skyscrapers. He thinks in systems. But when it came to money, he'd outsourced his thinking, and he didn't even know it. I know this story because I lived a version of it. I was 29, working a sales job in Chicago, pulling in about $67,000 a year. I thought I was investing. I had accounts. I had tickers. I checked my portfolio every single morning before I checked the weather. And what I actually had was a mirror. I was just reflecting whatever the loudest voice in the room said I should own. When tech was hot, I bought tech. When people said commodities, I bought commodities. When a guy at a rooftop bar told me he'd tripled his money on a small-cap biotech, I went home and looked it up. I had opinions. I just didn't have a philosophy. And there's a brutal difference between those two things. An opinion says, I think this stock is going up. A philosophy says, here is what I believe about how the world works. Here is what I own because of that belief. And here is exactly how much pain I'm willing to sit through before I touch it. One of those will save you. The other will eventually cost you everything you've made. Okay, so here's where it gets interesting. There's a concept in structural engineering, Marcus actually explained this to me, called resonant frequency. Every bridge, every building, has a natural frequency at which it vibrates. If an external force matches that frequency, the structure amplifies it. It doesn't dampen it. It makes it worse. The Tacoma Narrows Bridge collapsed in 1940, not because the wind was too strong, but because the wind hit the bridge's exact resonant frequency and the bridge tore itself apart. Your investment philosophy works the same way. If your beliefs don't come from your own reasoning, if they're borrowed, stitched together, second-hand, then the moment the market finds your resonant frequency, you collapse. Not because the market was too powerful, because your structure had no integrity. Marcus's resonant frequency was a 15% drawdown. That's all it took. 19% down and he was out. He sold into the panic, locked in the loss, and then watched the market recover 24% over the next 7 months. That's not a market failure. That's a philosophy failure. Now, what most people don't realize is that a real investment philosophy isn't built in a library. It's built in losses. I built mine between 2015 and 2019. 4 years of making mistakes that were specific and expensive. I once held a position in a retail company, I won't name it, because I was convinced the turnaround story was real. I'd read the CEO's letters. I believed in it. I held it from $18 a share down to $4. I lost $11,200. And I didn't sell it out of conviction. I sold it out of exhaustion. That loss taught me something no podcast ever did. It taught me the difference between believing in a story and believing in a structure. A story depends on things going right. A structure survives when things go wrong. And I mean that literally. The companies I own today, I've asked myself one specific question about each of them. If this business dropped 40% tomorrow and nobody could tell me why, would I buy more or would I run? If I hesitate at that question, I don't own it. That's my filter. It took me $11,200 and 4 years to find it. Let me be honest with you about something. Most people I talk to about investing don't have a philosophy problem. They have an ownership problem. They think of their portfolio as a scoreboard, a number that goes up or down, instead of a collection of businesses they partially own. When you think of your portfolio as a scoreboard, every down day feels like losing. When you think of it as ownership stakes in things that generate value, a down day is just the price going on sale. Think about that for a second. If you owned a rental property and someone knocked on your door and said, "Hey, I'll buy that from you for 20% less than it was worth last year," you'd laugh at them. You'd say, "No, it's still generating rent. The tenants are still there. The neighborhood is still solid." You wouldn't panic sell a physical asset just because someone offered you a bad price. But with stocks, which are literally fractional ownership of real businesses, people do the opposite. They sell when the price drops. They fire the asset because its price quote fell. That's the reframe. Your stocks aren't tickers, they're deeds. So here's the framework I want to give you. 3 questions. Every time you buy anything, a stock, an ETF, a piece of real estate, doesn't matter. You answer these 3 before you touch your money. First, what has to be true for this to generate value over the next decade? Not next month, 10 years. Second, what's the worst realistic scenario, and can I survive it financially and emotionally without selling? Third, am I buying this because I reasoned my way here, or because someone else's excitement got into my bloodstream? That third question is the most important one, and it's the one almost nobody asks. Between 2017 and 2021, the average retail investor underperformed the S&P 500 by 4.3% per year. Not because they picked bad companies, because they traded too much, they reacted, they moved money based on noise that matched their borrowed beliefs, and every reaction triggered a tax event, a timing mistake, or both. 4% per year sounds small. Over 20 years, starting with $50,000, that difference is $287,000. Gone. Not to the market, to behavior. Now, if you're the person who earns a solid income, knows investing matters, and has accounts set up, but deep down suspects your strategy is just a collection of other people's opinions, this is for you. You don't need more information. You need 1 honest hour with yourself. Tonight, or this weekend, sit down with a blank page, physical paper, not a screen, and write down why you own every single thing you own. Not the ticker, the reason, the actual belief underneath it. If you can't write a paragraph about why you own something, you don't own it with conviction. You're just renting someone else's idea. And borrowed ideas, like borrowed structures, collapse at the wrong frequency. Marcus rebuilt his philosophy after that $34,000 lesson. He told me it took him 3 months of reading, thinking, and writing before he put a single dollar back into the market. He came back slower, quieter, and with a filter he'd built himself. He's been fully invested for 14 months now. He hasn't checked his portfolio once during market hours. He said something to me that I've been thinking about ever since. He said, "I used to think the goal was to find the right answer. Now I think the goal is to build the right structure, one that holds when you're wrong. A philosophy you built will hold when the market shakes. A philosophy you borrowed will shake you out at exactly the wrong moment. Build yours. Write it down. Then own it like a deed, not a scoreboard."